In this story, a young lady named Clara struggled, suffered, and starved after her parents died, just so her sister could study and live a comfortable life. But when success finally came, her sister denied her. From the day their parents died, Clara Bennett stopped being just an elder sister. She became everything Emily had left in the world. While other girls her age worried about friends and school dances, Clara worried about rent, food, and how to keep her younger sister's future alive. Clara's mornings began long before the sun rose. The streets were always cold and quiet when she stepped out, carrying bundles of newspapers pressed tightly against her chest. She walked fast from house to house, slipping papers under doors and gates while the world was still asleep. Sometimes she paused outside bright homes where laughter floated through open windows. For a second, she allowed herself to imagine what it felt like to live without fear of tomorrow. Then she shook the thought away and kept walking. By mid-morning, Clara moved to her next job. She cleaned large, beautiful houses that smelled of expensive perfumes and fresh flowers. She scrubbed floors until her back burned and polished tables until she could see her tired reflection staring back at her. The owners barely noticed her. To them, she was just part of the house, like furniture that moved and cleaned without speaking. Clara never complained. Every drop of sweat had a purpose. Most afternoons, hunger followed her like a shadow. She often bought a small bread roll and saved half of it for Emily. Many nights, she drank water just to quiet the painful emptiness in her stomach. She would sit quietly outside their small apartment, pretending she had already eaten so Emily would not worry. Watching her sister study under a dim lamp was enough to keep her going. That was the only reward Clara needed. Emily was brilliant. Teachers spoke about her like she was destined for greatness. She always came home with the best grades and dreams bigger than the tiny room they shared. Clara listened to her talk about becoming a lawyer, her eyes shining with hope. Clara never doubted that Emily would succeed. She only worried about how she would afford to keep that dream alive. The day Emily received admission into a top university was one of the happiest days of Clara's life. And also one of the hardest. The acceptance letter felt heavy in Clara's hands, not because of the words written on it, but because of the money it demanded. Clara knew there was only one thing left she could sacrifice. Hidden at the bottom of her drawer was their mother's wedding ring. It was old and slightly worn, but it was the last piece of their parents Clara still had. She held it tightly, remembering her mother's laughter and the way she used to twist the ring absent-mindedly while cooking. Letting it go felt like losing her all over again, but Clara did not hesitate for long. The pawn shop smelled of dust and metal when she walked in. The man behind the counter examined the ring with cold, practiced eyes. He named a price that was far less than its true value. Clara knew it, but she nodded anyway. Her fingers trembled slightly as she accepted the money. She walked out of the shop with her chest feeling strangely empty, like she had left a part of herself behind. That night, she placed the money on Emily's small reading table while her sister slept. Books and notes covered the floor around her. Clara watched her for a long moment, her heart filled with pride and quiet pain. When Emily woke up and saw the money, she looked confused and worried. Clara simply smiled and told her not to ask questions. She told her the school fees were paid and that all she needed to do was study hard. Emily hugged her tightly, her voice shaking with emotion. She promised she would make Clara proud. Clara held her and whispered a promise of her own. That one day, Emily would have an easy life, free from struggle and hunger. From that moment, Clara worked even harder. Months passed, and Clara held on to every small sign of Emily's success like treasure. She kept newspaper clippings about Emily's academic achievements and proudly showed them to anyone who cared to listen. The neighbors began to speak about Emily like she was already successful. They told Clara her sacrifices would soon be rewarded. Clara believed them because she needed to. Still, life did not get easier for her. Some nights, the hunger felt unbearable. Other nights, exhaustion made her hands shake so badly, she struggled to hold cleaning tools. But each time she felt weak, she remembered Emily's bright smile and forced herself to continue. One rainy afternoon, Clara received a newspaper showing Emily had graduated as one of the best students in her class. Clara stood in the middle of the street, rain soaking through her clothes as she read Emily's name again and again. Pride filled her chest, but it mixed with a strange loneliness she could not explain. She carefully folded the newspaper and placed it inside a small box where she kept all memories of Emily's journey. That box became Clara's greatest treasure, proof that every sacrifice she made meant something. As she walked home under flickering streetlights that evening, Clara felt tired but hopeful. She believed her sister's success would change everything for both of them. She believed all the pain had finally led to something beautiful. Clara did not know that her greatest heartbreak was still waiting ahead. University changed Emily Bennett in ways Clara never expected. At first, the change was small, almost harmless. Emily called home every night during her first week on campus. She spoke quickly, her voice filled with excitement as she described tall lecture halls, new friends, and professors who spoke like they were reading from big important books. Clara would sit quietly on the edge of her narrow bed, smiling as she listened, asking small questions, enjoying the happiness in her sister's voice. Clara imagined Emily walking across large school buildings with confidence, carrying books that smelled new and expensive. Those thoughts gave her strength during long working hours. Whenever her hands ached from scrubbing floors or carrying heavy loads, she reminded herself that Emily was building the life she never had. But slowly, the calls began to change. They became shorter. Emily started calling only every few days. When she spoke, there was always background noise. Laughter, music, voices calling her name from far away. She sounded busy. Important. Clara never complained. She always told Emily to focus on her studies and enjoy her opportunities. Soon, the calls turned into messages. Then sometimes nothing at all. Clara told herself it was normal. University life was demanding. Emily was working hard. That was what mattered. Meanwhile, Emily's world was expanding faster than Clara could imagine. She met students from wealthy families who arrived on campus in shining cars and wore clothes Clara had only seen in magazines. They spoke about vacations abroad, expensive restaurants, and family businesses worth more money than Clara could count. At first, Emily felt out of place among them. She spoke carefully, afraid they would notice the truth about her background. But Emily was smart, confident, and beautiful. It did not take long for her to blend into their world. She learned how to dress like them. She learned how to speak like them. She learned how to laugh at jokes she barely understood. Slowly, she began to hide pieces of her past. She stopped mentioning her small apartment. She stopped talking about Clara's struggles. When friends asked about her family, she simply said her parents had died and left it at that. Clara remained proud of her sister, even as distance quietly grew between them. Months passed. Clara continued her routine of early mornings and late nights. She saved every little sign of Emily's success. She collected photos from the school website. She cut out articles about student competitions Emily won. She proudly showed them to neighbors and customers who visited the houses she cleaned. "Your sister will become very big," they would say. Clara always smiled and nodded, even when her body screamed for rest. During Emily's second year, something changed again. Emily stopped coming home during holidays. The first time, she said she needed to attend special academic programs. The second time, she said she had internship training. The third time, she simply said she was too busy. Clara never questioned her. She only said she understood. But sometimes, at night, Clara sat alone holding her phone, staring at Emily's last message for hours. The silence between them began to feel heavier than any work Clara carried during the day. Then, everything shifted the day Emily met Daniel Lawson. Daniel was charming, confident, and came from one of the richest families connected to powerful business empires. He was drawn to Emily's intelligence and strong personality. Emily was fascinated by his world. A world filled with private events, luxury dinners, and connections to people who controlled entire industries. Daniel introduced Emily to his social circle, and her life transformed almost overnight. She started attending charity galas, high-profile celebrations, and exclusive gatherings where cameras flashed constantly. Her wardrobe changed. Her phone filled with invitations. Her social media showed a new life filled with elegance and success. Clara first learned about Daniel through a newspaper article she found while cleaning a client's living room. The article showed a photograph of Emily standing beside Daniel at a charity fundraiser. Emily wore a beautiful evening gown, smiling brightly as cameras surrounded her. Clara froze as she stared at the image. Pride swelled inside her chest, but something else followed behind it. Something quiet and painful. Emily looked like she belonged to a world Clara could never enter. Clara carefully asked Emily about the photo during their next conversation. Emily sounded distracted. She confirmed she was dating Daniel but quickly changed the subject. Clara did not push further. She congratulated her sister and wished her happiness. Soon after, Emily's achievements grew even bigger. She graduated with top honors and quickly gained recognition in high society after marrying Daniel. News about their wedding spread at newspapers and social media. Photographs showed grand decorations, expensive gowns, and powerful guests. Clara kept every newspaper clipping she could find. She placed them carefully inside her small memory box beside Emily's old report cards and childhood photographs. Sometimes she opened the box late at night just to remind herself that every sacrifice had led to something beautiful. Despite Emily's success, Clara's life remained the same. Her apartment walls grew older. Her shoes wore out faster than she could replace them. Her work hours increased because living costs continued rising. But Clara never complained. Each struggle felt easier because she believed Emily's success meant their suffering had finally ended. One evening, Clara overheard two women discussing an upcoming charity event hosted by Emily and her husband. They spoke excitedly about celebrities and wealthy guests who would attend. Clara listened quietly, her heart beating faster with every word. For the first time in years, hope returned strongly to her chest. She realized she had never truly reunited with Emily since her graduation. She had watched her sister's life from a distance through newspapers and rumors, but they had not shared a proper moment together. Clara decided she would attend the charity event, not as a guest, but as a sister who simply wanted to surprise someone she loved. That night, Clara carefully removed the newspaper clipping showing Emily's wedding and stared at it for a long time. She smiled softly, imagining Emily's reaction when she saw her standing proudly among the crowd. Clara believed the reunion would finally bring them back together. She believed Emily would run into her arms and thank her for everything she had done. Clara did not know she was walking toward the moment that would destroy her heart in front of the entire world. Clara Bennett pushed through the velvet ropes and stepped into a world that smelled of perfume and gold. String lights hung like stars. Waiters moved with trays balanced like miracles. Cameras flashed on faces that smiled without thinking. Clara felt the noise hit her like a wall, then walked on because she had come for one thing, to see her sister. She found the entrance to the hall and paused. The gatekeepers wore earpieces and polite faces. A red carpet led inside where a band played soft music and people whispered names that sounded important. Clara's coat was patched. Her shoes had seen better seasons. She smoothed her coat with hands that trembled a little and clutched the small box she always carried, the one with the newspaper clippings and the button from Emily's first uniform. Inside, guests laughed and raised champagne glasses. A giant banner read Harvest Hope Gala with Emily's name in the corner as the event's patron. Clara's chest tightened with pride so big it hurt. She stepped forward, the box against her ribs like proof she belonged. She reached for the hostess at the front. "Excuse me," she said, voice steady. I'm here to see Emily Bennett. I brought a..." Her words cut off when a hand rested on her elbow. "Ma'am, this is a private event," the security man said. His tone was smooth like the well-polished floor. "Do you have an invitation?" Clara's throat felt dry. She fumbled for the simple invitation she didn't have. "No," she said. I'm her sister. She's Emily. I came to surprise her." The guard studied her like a problem he'd rather not solve. "Sister of whom?" At that exact moment, across the room, Emily Bennett stood by a flower wall, laughing with guests. She looked like a picture from a magazine. Perfect hair, perfect dress, a perfect smile. Clara watched her, every heartbeat a desperate drum. Clara stepped closer, calling, Em, it's me, Clara." Her voice rose, small and raw. The laughter stopped around Emily for one breath. She turned slowly, saw her sister, and in that slow turn the world changed. Emily's face went blank. For a second, Clara thought she would run forward, throw her arms open, and the room would fold around them like the end of a long, hard road. That did not happen. Emily's eyes slid away. She shook her head like a judge closing a book. "I don't know her," she said, soft but hard. The words cut through the chatter and froze like ice. The crowd's warmth turned chilly. A woman nearby whispered, "Is she lost?" Somebody took a step back. Emily lifted her hand, the polite smile back in place that everyone paid to see. "Security, please remove her." Hands moved before Clara could stop them. Two guards came forward with practiced gentleness. One took her elbow. They steered her toward the side door. Clara's knees nearly gave out, but she kept her balance. She opened her mouth to say something. Anything. But the guard's grip tightened. "Emily," Clara shouted. "Please." Her words tumbled out as if they belonged to another life. Emily did not come. She stood with her chin high and watched as Clara's small world was pulled apart in front of chandeliers and cameras. Someone filmed it anyway. Phones out, faces hungry for the moment. Clara felt each recording like a sting. As the guards walked her away, Clara's bag hit the edge of a decorative table. It tore along the seam. The little box inside slid free and spilled onto the polished floor. A photo slid out. An old picture of two girls in a secondhand uniform, arms around each other, hair wild and unstyled. A folded newspaper clipping fluttered open. People stopped. Fingers pointed. The band faltered for one beat. The guards reached down to gather her things. A hand hovered over the photograph and then let it go, as if touching it might make the scene more real. Near the back of the hall, watching from the shadows, a tall man in a dark suit had been talking with donors. His face was calm, older than most, with a look that made people listen without being told. He watched Emily's denial and then the scene that followed. He saw the photograph on the floor. He saw Clara's face when she looked up, naked and raw and broken. And something tightened inside him. This man was Victor Langley. He had watched many social dramas and had learned how to read small truths in the way someone held their hands, how a voice faltered, how eyes betrayed lies. Tonight, his eyes did not leave the photograph. He rose from his seat slowly, the motion small but deliberate. He stepped away from his table and moved along the edge of the room, his attention fixed like a beam. He did not push through the crowd. He did not shout. He simply watched Clara as she was escorted out, watched the tear in the seam of her bag, watched the little box slide across the marble and slow to a stop. Clara was outside then, under a small awning as rain began to patter. The guards let her go, leaving a ring of murmurs behind. She held the box to her chest like a child clutches a bone. She felt exposed, humiliated. She had come to be seen and instead had been erased. Inside, somewhere, Emily laughed again with a guest, pretending everything had been only an awkward interruption. Cameras moved on. But outside, in the shadow of the gala, a man in a dark suit walked away from the warmth. He tucked a photograph, one he had picked up while someone had been distracted, into his pocket. His jaw was tight. His eyes were not the same as they had been an hour before. He had seen something that would not let him sleep. The night after the gala, Victor Langley could not sleep. The image of the torn bag, the photograph sliding across the marble floor, and the look on the woman's face stayed with him like a voice refusing to be silenced. He had attended hundreds of high-profile events, seen countless social embarrassments, but something about that moment felt wrong. Too raw. Too real to be dismissed as a desperate stranger looking for money. By morning, curiosity had turned into determination. Victor began quietly asking questions. Not the loud kind that reached newspapers or family gossip. The quiet kind that opened locked truths. He requested records from Emily's university under the pretense of reviewing scholarship donors. He visited the neighborhoods listed on Emily's old admission forms. He spoke to people who had known her before success softened her history. Every place he visited told the same story. They spoke about Clara Bennett. They spoke about a young woman who worked endlessly, who carried newspapers before sunrise, who cleaned houses until her hands cracked, who often skipped meals but never skipped paying her sister's fees. They spoke about the day Clara sold her late mother's ring and cried quietly on a bus while clutching tuition money. They spoke about how she proudly showed Emily's academic achievements to anyone who would listen, as if those victories belonged to both of them. Victor collected receipts, payment records, testimonies from former teachers, photographs from school staff showing Clara attending meetings Emily never knew about. Every new discovery built a truth that grew heavier with each piece. By the end of the week, Victor sat alone in his study, surrounded by documents that told a story his family had never heard. A story that made his chest tighten with disappointment and disbelief. He realized he did not just need to confront Emily. He needed her to face the truth publicly, just as publicly as she had denied it. A few nights later, Victor hosted a formal family gathering at his estate. The event was announced as a celebration of the family's business success, drawing influential relatives, partners, and close friends. The hall glittered with expensive decorations, golden chandeliers, and elegant music floating softly through the air. Emily arrived beside her husband, smiling confidently, greeting guests with effortless charm. She had no idea that the evening had been carefully arranged for something far more serious than celebration. Halfway through dinner, Victor stood slowly from his seat and raised his glass, signaling for attention. Conversations faded. Glasses paused mid-air. The room fell silent, waiting for his speech. Victor cleared his throat, his voice calm but firm. Tonight, he began, I want to speak about truth and gratitude. Emily smiled politely, expecting one of his usual philosophical speeches about success and responsibility. But her smile began to fade when Victor placed a small worn box on the table beside him. The same box that had fallen on the gala floor. A quiet murmur moved across the room. Victor opened the box slowly and removed the contents one by one. The faded photograph of two young girls in school uniforms, the old newspaper clipping celebrating Emily's achievements, and the final item, a receipt for a pawned wedding ring dated years earlier. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Victor spoke again, his voice sharper now. These belong to the woman you said you did not know. The room became painfully still. Victor began reading aloud from documents detailing Clara's sacrifices. Each record felt like a hammer striking the fragile image Emily had built around herself. He spoke about the sleepless nights Clara worked, the meals she gave up, the sacrifices she made so Emily could stand where she stood today. Every word stripped away another layer of Emily's confidence. Whispers spread across the hall. Guests exchanged stunned glances. Some stared openly at Emily, their admiration quickly turning into judgment. Emily tried to speak, but her voice failed her. Her eyes filled with tears she could no longer control. For the first time in years, she looked small, vulnerable, exposed. Victor then gave a final command that froze the room. Bring her in. The large doors at the end of the hall opened slowly. Clara Bennett stepped inside. She wore the same simple clothes she always wore. Her posture was straight, but her eyes carried the weight of memories she wished she could forget. The room watched her as if she were a ghost walking into a world she never belonged to. Emily's hands trembled violently. She stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Clara, I was wrong, she whispered, her voice breaking. I was ashamed of my past. I was afraid of losing everything. I forgot the person who gave me everything. The confession hung in the air, heavy and painful. Clara looked at her sister for a long moment. Years of sacrifice, loneliness, pride, and heartbreak passed through her eyes like silent storms. The room waited for her to speak, to forgive, to scream, to do something that would ease the tension crushing everyone's chest. But Clara simply spoke softly. "I never wanted your money. I only wanted to still be your sister." The simplicity of those words hit harder than any anger could. Emily collapsed into tears, falling to her knees in front of Clara, begging for forgiveness. The powerful guests who once admired her now watched silently, unsure whether they were witnessing redemption or consequence. Clara's heart ached as she looked at the girl she had raised. Love still lived inside her, but so did deep scars that time could not erase easily. She reached down and gently helped Emily stand. "I forgive you," Clara said quietly. But forgiveness does not erase pain. It only frees the heart from carrying hate. The room remained silent as Clara turned and walked toward the exit, leaving behind a truth no one would ever forget. Emily stood frozen, realizing that success had given her everything, except the one thing that truly mattered. As Clara stepped outside into the cool night air, she breathed deeply for the first time in years. The pain was still there, but it no longer controlled her. Some sacrifices ask for nothing in return. They only ask to be remembered. What did you get to learn from this story? Kindly drop your thoughts and questions below. Do well to hit the subscribe button to see more emotional and exciting stories like this on Folktales by Siri.